You know, when you walk onto like a big Hollywood movie set, the first thing that strikes you is just the sheer scale of the illusion.
Oh, absolutely.
You look down this fabricated street and you see these massive, imposing bank buildings and grand hotels,
Yeah.
and they look incredibly solid.
Yeah, like they've been weathering storms for a century or something.
Right, exactly. But if you walk around to the back of those buildings, you realize pretty quickly it's just a facade.
Just completely hollow.
Yeah, it's just plywood, maybe some scaffolding, and like a few 2x4s holding the entire structure up. I mean, there is no plumbing, there is no foundation.
It's a structural illusion designed entirely for the camera.
Exactly.
And, it creates a convincing image for the viewer, but it cannot actually bear any real weight. I mean, if you tried to move a business into that building,
Oh, man.
the whole thing would just collapse the moment you leaned on the walls.
And I really want you to keep that image of the Hollywood facade in your mind for this deep dive. Because today we are asking a highly counterintuitive question about enterprise architecture.
Yeah, we are.
What if the biggest, most established compliance software companies in the world, the vendors you trust with your most sensitive financial data, are actually selling you a structural illusion?
It's a huge question.
It is. What if the platform you assume is protecting your global business is actually a facade that is eventually going to trap your operations?
I mean, it is a genuinely unsettling premise when you really think about it.
Yeah.
Because when enterprise leaders talk about compliance technology, the dominant fear is usually regulatory fines, right, or audit penalties.
Sure, the immediate financial hit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the architectural analyses and the articles we are looking at today, they argue that regulatory fines are actually the least of your worries.
Wait, really? The least?
Yeah. According to the sources, the real danger is architectural paralysis.
Okay, so today's deep dive is based on this fascinating stack of technical sources that break down what they identify as the 5 architectural failure modes in global compliance technology.
Right.
And just to be totally clear, our mission today is not just to talk about the dry intricacies of tax software.
No, not at all.
We are here to uncover a massive, silent blind spot
Right.
that CFOs and CIOs across the globe are largely just missing completely.
Yeah, they really are.
We are talking about architectural costs that accumulate invisibly. It's essentially holding your organization's financial intelligence hostage. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
According to our sources, the core problem is that the global compliance tech market is broadly failing today because it is flawlessly solving a problem from, a decade ago.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the historical context of what that past problem actually was. I mean, for a long time, the only real technical challenge in digital tax compliance was just transmission.
Transmission, like moving files.
Right. Think of it as a highly specialized delivery job. A company had to extract tax-relevant data out of their enterprise resource planning software, their ERP, and just send it to a government tax authority.
In a specific digital format, right?
Exactly.
So the ERP system spoke one language, the government spoke another, and businesses just needed like a translator and a secure digital delivery truck to bridge the gap at the end of the month.
Yeah, that was the entire operating model back then.
Wow.
The market just optimized itself completely around translation, transmission, error handling, and, making sure the monthly or quarterly digital paperwork got filed.
Right, but the environment changed.
It completely mutated. The regulatory environment in 2025 and beyond is totally different. The mandates have shifted from periodic reporting to what regulators call continuous transaction controls, or CTCs.
CTCs, got it.
Yeah, we are now dealing with real-time invoice clearance and comprehensive live financial data submissions like SFT.
An SFT is it's basically a standardized digital file, right?
Exactly. It contains a company's entire accounting data. So compliance is no longer this periodic chore where you just bundle up documents at the end of the month.
It is a continuous real-time operating condition.
Yes.
Like the compliance check is embedded right inside the commercial transaction itself.
Yeah.
If the system goes down, business stops.
Which requires a fundamental architectural transformation. I mean, the question a CFO or an IT director needs to be asking isn't, can this software send my data to the French or Italian government?
Like, that's the old question.
Exactly. The new question is, does this underlying architecture allow my organization to use real-time compliance data as a continuous financial intelligence asset?
Wow, that's a big shift.
It is, because if your system is just built to be a delivery truck, it cannot handle enterprise-wide financial intelligence.
So if the problem is escalated from monthly reporting to this real-time global transaction control. The logical reaction for any enterprise leader listening would probably be, look, I'm not taking any chances here. I'm going to buy the biggest, most expensive global solution on the market.
Right. Give me the biggest one.
Yeah, give me the vendor with the largest market cap and the most pins on the world map. But according to our deep dive into these failure modes, that instinct leads you straight into the first major trap.
It really does. Our sources label this the acquisition architecture, or the M&A patchwork.
The patchwork.
Yeah, because the reality is that the biggest compliance providers in the world, they rarely built a unified global architecture from scratch.
They just bought it.
Exactly. They achieved their massive market position by acquiring local specialized technology companies in each major compliance market.
So they bought a specialist in Spain.
Right, another in Brazil.
And another one in Germany.
Exactly.
But hold on, if I'm looking at my user dashboard and it looks perfectly unified to my team, I honestly don't care how they built it under the hood.
You'd think so.
Right. Like if it works, it works. Let the vendor worry about managing the back-end code base. Why should an enterprise buyer care if it's an M&A patchwork?
Well, you will care the moment a jurisdiction updates its tax laws.
Oh.
Because that beautiful unified dashboard you're looking at, it is just a skin. It is the Hollywood facade we talked about.
Oh, wow. So underneath that brand.
It is a profoundly fragmented mess underneath. You are actually connecting to multiple different underlying platforms, and each one has its own unique data model, its own integration rules, its own update cycles.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is. The sources call the consequence of this the perpetual services engagement.
The perpetual services engagement, meaning you haven't bought a product, you've basically bought a dependency.
Exactly. When Spain introduces a new e-invoicing mandate, that regulatory change doesn't ripple smoothly through a single unified system.
Right.
The vendor now has to send a consulting team to manually patch the specific Spanish module they acquired, like 6 years ago.
So every single regulatory change requires a dedicated cycle of vendor scoping, testing, implementation.
Yes. You are entirely at the mercy of their consulting organization, their timelines, their hourly rates.
And I imagine you are constantly competing for attention against their entire global portfolio of customers who are all dealing with the exact same regulatory updates at the same time.
That's exactly it.
There is a quote from the source material that captures how brutal this reality is for an IT budget. It says, you can buy global coverage from one company and still be operating 15 different compliance architectures simultaneously.
It's staggering.
It is. You think you've purchased this cohesive platform, but a year into the relationship, you realize you're just endlessly paying consulting fees to patch a fundamentally broken foundation.
Which logically pushes buyers toward a totally different extreme.
Okay.
I mean, if taping a bunch of acquired companies together is a nightmare for system updates, you might think the obvious solution is to just abandon local specialized systems entirely.
Right, just buy one massive, incredibly fast data pipe. Strip it down to the bare metal. If the patchwork fails, let's just rely on a system that is incredibly good at moving data from point A to point B.
Yeah.
This introduces what the sources call the transmission-only model, or the unintelligent messenger.
The unintelligent messenger, I love that term.
Me too. We are talking about vendors who built their empires on EDI, electronic data interchange.
Right.
EDI is the standard technology businesses have used for decades to exchange documents, like purchase orders, electronically. These vendors are essentially the world's most reliable digital postmen.
And if your only problem is bilateral document exchange, a highly reliable postman is fantastic.
Sure.
Millions of documents go in, they arrive at the right destination in the exact right format without fail. The volume capacity is staggering.
Yep.
But here's the critical failure point in a modern regulatory landscape. The postman does not read the mail.
And because it doesn't read the mail, it can't warn you if the contents of that mail are going to trigger a massive legal problem.
Exactly. Let's look at how continuous transaction controls actually operate in countries like Brazil or Chile.
Okay.
In these jurisdictions, the tax authority's algorithm inspects the data payload of your invoice in real time.
Right, as it's happening.
Yes. If the government system spots an anomaly or rejects the tax calculation, the invoice is invalid. And legally, that means the physical truck carrying your goods is not allowed to leave the warehouse.
Wow.
A dumb pipe cannot validate the invoice against the destination country's current tax schema before sending it.
It can't tell you if the transaction creates a financial risk position.
No, it just carries data. It does not understand data.
It's flying blind.
Yeah.
And the major transmission vendors realize this, right? They know the postman desperately needs a brain to survive in the CTC world.
They absolutely know it.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because their attempt to fix the dumb pipe leads directly to the next trap, the incompatible architecture marriage, the forced coupling.
Yeah, this is a mess.
This happens when a massive EDI vendor tries to solve their lack of intelligence by literally gluing a sophisticated tax calculation engine onto their existing transmission network.
It is the ultimate engineering compromise. I mean, you have a tax engine, which is structurally this complex, rules-based logic processor,
Right.
and you have a document exchange system, which is built entirely for high-throughput brute force transmission.
Two completely different things.
Totally. These components were developed by totally different engineering traditions, operating on totally different architectural philosophies.
It's like taking a highly sophisticated AI brain and welding it onto a 1990s fax machine.
Yes.
They operate on entirely different assumptions about the universe.
Hmm?
The AI brain wants to pause and process complex logic, while the fax machine just wants to shove paper through a phone line as fast as possible.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the friction here, and when you force those distinct architectures to operate as one, you introduce severe latency. Yeah. When data has to cross the boundary between the transmission system and the tax engine, it requires constant API handshakes and processing delays.
We're talking about milliseconds here, though, right?
Yeah.
Does an enterprise really care if an invoice takes an extra 400 milliseconds to process?
In a traditional batch reporting environment, no.
Okay.
In a continuous transaction control environment, yes, milliseconds are life and death.
Wait, really? Sub-seconds?
Yes. Many modern tax authorities mandate that an invoice must be cleared and validated within strict sub-second timeframes.
Wow.
If your vendor's internal architecture is constantly handing data back and forth across a messy boundary, the latency accumulates. The government server times out.
Which means...
That isn't just a technical glitch on a dashboard. It means the transaction legally fails to exist. You cannot bill your customer.
The sources also highlight a devastating long-term consequence called architectural drift.
Yep.
You have these two different engineering systems glued together, accumulating technical debt at totally different speeds. Pushing the tax engine forward with an update might completely break the legacy transmission side.
It happens all the time.
The source text summarizes this perfectly. It says, the forced coupling of two independent architectures does not create a unified platform. It creates a managed incompatibility.
A managed incompatibility. It is just a constant balancing act to keep the system from tearing itself apart.
Right.
And unfortunately, when a vendor's internal architecture becomes too complex and expensive to manage, they often resort to the most damaging strategy of all.
Oh no, what's that?
They outsource the complexity.
They make it the customer's problem.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the customer-side complexity transfer, or, as the sources call it, the pre-formatted trap.
This one is rough.
This one feels like a massive bait and switch for enterprise buyers.
Yeah.
This failure mode occurs when a vendor requires the customer to transform their own raw ERP data into highly specific country-by-country XML schemas before the vendor's platform will even accept the data.
Yeah, and to put that into perspective, an XML schema is essentially a highly rigid digital blueprint.
Okay.
Let's say Italy requires electronic invoices to be submitted in a specific format called Fattura PA.
Right.
The vendor platform tells the customer, we will connect to the Italian government for you, but only if you map and convert your internal financial data into perfect Fattura PA format before you hand it to us.
So you buy an enterprise compliance platform, but your own internal IT team has to do the heavy lifting of data transformation first.
Exactly. You're refining your own gasoline.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Corporate IT teams build data integrations all the time, don't they?
Sure, they do.
Is it really that catastrophic to ask an enterprise IT department to build some data mapping bridges?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, you aren't just asking them to build a bridge once.
Okay.
You are forcing your organization to create a permanent, incredibly fragile operational IT function. The vendor is only updating the final connection to the tax authority.
Oh, I see.
The customer is forced to write, monitor, and maintain the actual transformation code.
So when Italy updates the rules for Facade PA next year, meaning they change the exact digital format they require, the vendor updates their receiving doc, but your custom IT code is instantly obsolete.
Exactly. And who has to rewrite that transformation code?
Your IT team.
Who has to run the regression testing? Your IT team. And consider the internal risks here, too.
Like what?
Well, what happens when your company decides to spend millions upgrading its own internal systems, like migrating to SAP S/4HANA?
Oh boy.
Suddenly, every single piece of custom compliance code your team has written for 20 different countries might break simultaneously because the underlying data structures in your new ERP have changed.
So you are permanently trapped, maintaining this fragile bridge between your evolving business data and the vendor's extremely rigid inputs.
Yes.
As the source text points out, the preformatted trap transfers architectural complexity from the vendor to the customer, disguising an incomplete platform as a complete solution.
It's disguised.
You only realize you've been trapped when your IT budget explodes 2 years into the contract.
Right.
Over time, as a multinational adds more jurisdictions, that custom code piles up into an unmanageable mountain of technical debt.
Which naturally leads enterprise leaders to look inward.
Makes sense.
I mean, if relying on an external vendor means dealing with fragmented M&A patchworks, dumb pipes, glued together systems, or massive internal coding requirements.
Yeah, the instinct is to pull the drawbridge up.
Exactly.
Right, that sounds like the absolute safest haven. If external transmission and formatting are such a mess, you already paid tens of millions of dollars for your enterprise ERP system. So why not just turn on the localized compliance modules natively inside your existing software? Keep the logic safely locked in-house, right next to the data.
And it is entirely understandable why a CIO would draw that conclusion. I mean, it feels secure, right?
Yeah, very controlled.
But our sources identify this as the fifth failure mode. They call it the ERP dependency architecture, or the locked add-ons.
The locked add-on.
Yeah. And from an enterprise agility perspective, it is arguably the most fundamental category error a global company can make.
A category error. Building compliance natively into the system that generates the data seems like the most logical architecture possible.
Well, it assumes that a single ERP is the correct layer for global compliance logic to live.
Okay, you know.
If you are a mid-sized business operating entirely within a single country with one stable regulatory environment and one ERP instance, it absolutely works.
But for a modern multinational enterprise?
It fails spectacularly due to ERP heterogeneity.
ERP heterogeneity, meaning the reality that a massive global corporation never actually uses just one system.
Precisely. Picture a large corporate group that has grown through years of acquisitions.
Okay.
Their operations in Germany are running on a highly customized instance of SAP. Their recently acquired U.S. headquarters is using Oracle.
And maybe a subsidiary in the UK is running on NetSuite.
Right. If your compliance logic is trapped as a native add-on inside each local ERP, you cannot build a unified global architecture.
So you have a localized German compliance system sitting in SAP, a localized U.S. system in Oracle, and they are completely isolated from each other.
Yes, they do not share a data model. They do not share reporting outputs. Every time you enter a new market, it is a completely standalone implementation project.
Oh, man.
Adding your 15th country requires just as much custom coding and specialized consulting as adding your first.
You aren't building a scalable global capability. You are just managing a chaotic portfolio of disconnected localized solutions.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for the business? The sources point to a cascading failure here, and it's the most devastating one for the C-suite. The total loss of financial intelligence.
It really is.
Because if your compliance data is locked inside separate local ERP silos, the CFO can never get a real-time, consolidated view of the company's financial position.
No, they can't. I mean, how do you deploy artificial intelligence on your financial operations if your global data is fragmented across entirely different software boundaries?
You can.
How do you optimize global cash flow if you cannot see your live VAT positions across all entities in one coherent, standardized view?
You're just guessing at that point.
The ERP-embedded architecture treats compliance as a localized administrative chore, Generate a document, submit it to a local authority, and check the box.
As the text says, an ERP-embedded compliance solution solves a local problem by accepting a global constraint.
Yes.
It completely destroys your organization's ability to build a continuous stream of structured, real-time financial intelligence.
And that brings us full circle to the core thesis of these documents. The broader market is fundamentally misaligned with the reality of modern commerce. We have left the world of periodic regulatory obligations far behind. We are now in an era that demands continuous, globally standardized financial intelligence.
So if these 5 architectural models, the M&A patchwork, the dumb pipe, the forced coupling, the customer-built bridge, and the isolated ERP add-on, if they're all traps, what does the right architecture actually look like?
Well, based on the sources, the solution requires a total paradigm shift.
Okay, what's step 1?
First, you need a platform that accepts raw, standard transactional data directly from any ERP without forcing the customer to pre-format the data or build complex transformation bridges.
That makes sense. Stop refining your own gas.
Exactly. Second, it must operate globally on a unified canonical data model.
A canonical data model, meaning?
It acts as a universal translator.
Yeah.
Instead of needing 50 different custom data maps for 50 different countries, the platform translates your raw data once into a universal standard.
Oh.
And then the platform's internal architecture handles the local formatting for every jurisdiction. No M&A patchworks. When you activate a new country, it is merely an extension of a global platform, not a completely new implementation project.
That sounds so much cleaner. Third, I'm assuming it has to maintain what the industry calls a clean core relationship with your ERP.
Yes, absolutely critical.
That means all the heavy, complex compliance logic happens externally. You do not modify the internal code of your ERP system to accommodate local tax laws.
Right, which keeps your internal systems clean, agile, and easy to upgrade.
And finally, it must act as a continuous financial intelligence layer.
Yeah, it shouldn't just push mandated documents to government regulators.
Right.
It should feed real-time, standardized, legally cleared data back into your internal analytical tools, your treasury systems, and your AI deployments.
This is exactly why this matters so deeply to you, the listener. If you are a CFO, a CIO, or a tax leader, buying compliance technology is no longer a localized regulatory risk decision.
No, it's not.
You are not just buying insurance against a tax fine. You are making a foundational architectural decision that will dictate exactly what your organization's financial intelligence can achieve for the next decade.
It's the foundation of your future.
And size, legacy brand names, and market position are not architectural properties.
Yeah.
Just because a vendor's market presence is massive doesn't mean their foundation isn't made of plywood.
And this raises an important question, and it's something every enterprise leader needs to carefully evaluate as we move further into the age of automation.
What's that?
If the manual generation of financial reporting and compliance is inevitably going to be taken over by real-time algorithms, the role of finance and IT leadership is going to fundamentally change.
It has to. If AI is managing the day-to-day data streams, will the CFOs and CIOs of tomorrow still be traditional finance experts and project managers?
Or will the leaders who succeed be the ones who operate like architectural engineers?
The ones who know how to build a flawless, unfragmented foundation today, so their AI actually has pristine global data to learn from tomorrow.
Exactly.
It's absolutely worth walking around to the back of the Hollywood facade and checking the foundation. Because if the entire structure is just propped up by 2x4s, it's only a matter of time before the wind blows.